everybody, it's Julianne. This is Saturday, if you're trying to keep track of the days. This is Baking with Friends. We are making chocolate chip oatmeal cookies today. Hi, Christine. Today I'm being joined by my good friend Sherry, and we are both from the Bay Area. So today, in her honor, I am wearing my number 16 Joe Montana San Francisco 49er t-shirt. Go Niners. Despite the fact that it is not football season. So, all right, so we're making cookies. Make sure your oven right now is preheated to 325 degrees. This cookie recipe lends itself to not having to refrigerate cookie dough. I think we've talked about in the past, I usually typically like the fact that you can refrigerate your cookie dough. I actually find that the concentration of flavors is better after refrigeration, and it actually solidifies your butter back up, so the spread is really nice when you bake. But today we're mashing up a DoubleTree recipe, and we're also mashing up a Neiman Marcus recipe. And so those two things combined will kind of cancel each other out, and we don't have to refrigerate necessarily. You can, that is an option, but for today's purposes, we are not. We are preheating our oven though to 325 degrees again, and you need to have the following ingredients. So you should have some flour today. Any mix will do, all-purpose, whole wheat. You can use your bread flour if you really want to give that up, if that's all you've got lying around the house, you know, whole wheat pastry flour, whatever. Any kind of flour is going to do for this. I also recommend you go ahead and grind your oats so it kind of becomes an oat flour. But along with the flour, you're going to need some rolled oats. And then with the rolled oats, I recommend that you grind maybe a quarter cup to half of it, just because of the incorporation. It's going to give it a nice flavor without having it incorporate gritty, is the word that I want to use today. So I am going to add in sherry. Hopefully this works. Technical difficulties usually abound. We're waiting for Sherry to join us. But you're also going to use a combination of brown sugar and white sugar. Brown sugar is completely up to you. Sherry, I can see a ceiling.
Hold on.
All right. I'll give you the ingredients. There we go. There we go. Hey, Alex. You're using a combination of sugars today, white and brown. It's up to you which kind of sugar you'd like. The darker your sugar, the darker your cookie. That's just a heads up. Also salt, baking powder, baking soda, vanilla. We're using lemon juice, which is the secret of the DoubleTree recipe, and that's going to be for acidity purposes. And when Mary joins, she can fact check us into the reason why that works in the science of baking, because we're going to use today the lemon juice to mix with the baking soda to cause kind of a little reaction into your cookie, and it's going to cause your cookie to actually be chewier. It sort of does the same thing as like a baking powder or crema tartar, but we're actually using baking powder and baking soda, some salt, some chocolate chips or chocolate chunks or whatever you'd like to use. And I completely forgot to grate my chocolate. I just thought about that right now. I completely forgot to grate my chocolate. So this is going to be a long road today. And I actually forgot, I realized to take out my butter, to room temp my butter today, which is a huge cookie mistake because of the fact that you need your butter to be room temperature in order for it to cream properly with your sugars. There's some things that you can do with it. Don't microwave your butter. Everyone's like, oh, the thing that you should do if your butter is cold is microwave it. You can't control the temperature of your microwave, and you'll end up melting your butter, and you don't want to melt your butter. So I went ahead and I created a steam bath. This is the random crazy method that I have seen. You create like a little steam bath. You go ahead and put it in a stainless steel bowl, you cover it in hot water, then you flip the bowl over and you stick your butter underneath it, and it's supposed to help meltish your butter to like room temp. And I also just stuck it on top of my oven while we've been talking, while my oven is heating up, and I'm hoping that the residual heat coming from my oven is going to help it melt a little. So we're going to find out. This is going to either be a disaster or it's going to be like the best mistake I've ever made. But room temp butter. So today, like last week, Sherry and I, welcome Sherry to Baking with Friends. So Sherry and I have known each other from California. Sherry originally was, we're not going to talk about college, and we're not going to talk about how long it was. Sherry was actually my sister's college friend, and we all became friends. And we will not talk about when we were in college. Christine, don't remind everyone when we were all in school. So I have known her since then, but we are both in California, and for honor again, I am wearing, you can't really see it so well right now, but right now, there you go, number 16, Joe Montana. I will argue the greatest quarterback of all time. This is not the time and place to argue with me, so we're not going to go there. But go Niners, and in honor of Sherry, Bay Area. So we're going to take our butter. Sherry, did you remember to take your butter out so that it's room temp?
Yeah, I did it like a couple of hours ago. So like another trick that I did, so I've tried the microwave method, and that was like a serious heat thing. You could do it, but you have to turn your butter every 7 seconds per side. So you're only heating it for 24, 28 seconds. And it does work. But you just have to be you have to watch it, because you have to
You can't just let it go. And as I was saying to everybody, when I went ahead, I prepared all my ingredients. I forgot to take my butter out. So we're going to be working with maybe melted butter. We're going to find out momentarily. I busted out my stand mixer for this. You don't need that. You can mix everything by hand. That is the truth. It's just going to take a lot more elbow grease. If you've got a hand mixer or a stand mixer, that will probably save you the effort, because the speed of your mixer will cream your butter and your sugars together. And that's basically an incorporation, right? You just want to make sure everything is really incorporated, and you want to aerate your batter, because that is going to cause all the nice little, and I think we talked about it a little bit before too, like a lot of the way that the pockets happen, and everything becomes like chewy and like buttery, and especially in cookies, you like that, and it happens if you're the type of person that enjoys the spread of the cookie, which I do. I like a kind of, Sherry, are you like a puffy cookie person, or are you more like a thin cookie person?
I like a medium one. I don't like it like too thick. I don't like it like thin like Tate's. Just like medium.
Just medium. I mean, yeah, that makes sense to me too. I also I like it when it's crispy on the outside, on the edges, and then it's like nice and chewy in the middle. Those are my favorite type. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and take our sugars first. So that is a 1/3 cup of brown sugar plus a tablespoon, and a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, also plus a tablespoon. And I went ahead and, again, I'm going to go ahead and show you my bowl. This is a mashup. This chocolate chip oatmeal cookie recipe is a mashup between the Neiman Marcus recipe, also hi Derek, the Neiman Marcus recipe, and the DoubleTree cookie recipe that they just released while we were all in quarantine. So the Neiman Marcus recipe, we can go into like the mythology of that as we mix all this stuff, is basically a recipe someone vindictively put on the internet based on the Neiman Marcus cookie, because she wanted the recipe. They charged her what they said was $250. It ended up being $250. She thought it was so expensive. She supposedly put it on the internet, and that's the Neiman Marcus story. So I'm going to show you my bowl. Again, I'm using a stand mixer. This is just golden brown sugar, and then I'm using regular white granulated sugar. And that's a 1/3 cup plus a tablespoon of each type. And I'm actually going to go ahead and mix that together. I like mixing my sugars first, because then all the sugars are mixed well before you incorporate the butter. And you don't have to be super fancy about it, right? Like, it doesn't have to go on forever. You just need it to be mixed enough so that way that you can see the brown and the white crystals mixed in. We're going to now take a stick of butter. And this is the part where Julianne hopes to work. It should be room temperature, because the butter needs to be soft, but not melted and not cold from the fridge. And again, Sherry went over a quick method you could do. Do not just stick it in the microwave and walk away. If you stick it in the microwave, you have to turn it every 7 to 8 seconds. I stuck it on top of my oven really quick and hoped that the residual heat would help. So let's find out. Clients. I wouldn't call it like super room temp, but I think it's enough. I'm using this Kerrygold Irish butter. It is 8 tablespoons or a stick, and I'm just going to dump that straight into my bowl. And now we're going to do what is called the creaming method. And basically, all we're really doing is we're incorporating the sugars and the butter together. And a lot of people are afraid at this point that they overmix the sugar and the butter. And actually, there's a lot of people, if you look at recipes online, if you look at like pastry chef blogs, they actually advise that you cream your butter and sugar for quite a while, because you want it to be as incorporated as possible. Nobody wants to bite into a cookie and have a giant chunk of butter. Like, you just don't. I mean, unless you really enjoy butter. We'll put that caveat out there just in case. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this down. We are going to mix this butter I didn't even cut it. I just dumped the whole stick in stop it, and I'm going to show you guys what it's looking like right now. So if you're using a stand mixer at home, or if you're even using just like a hand mixer, what ends up happening is your butter tends to rise up along with the sugars in the bowl. So you just like to push it down. And again, we're looking for it to be consistently mixed, okay? It's going to look creamy, and that's what it's going to be like that grittiness of the sugar, but it's going to be creamy looking. And you just want it to be as mixed and incorporated as much as possible. You want the sugar to be embedded. So here, let me go ahead and give you guys a closer look. So this is pretty good, but can you see there's still pieces of butter that like haven't incorporated in? That's probably because mine wasn't super room temp, like a rookie. So I'm gonna put that back in real quick, and I'm just gonna do it for like another 2 or 3 minutes. When I say 2 or 3 minutes, I really mean like a minute or two.
So my butter is pretty soft because it's my apartment's pretty warm, so I think it's pretty well incorporated.
Yeah, mine looks pretty good too. Actually, I'm pleasantly surprised that my steam bath method of trying to and sticking my butter on top of my oven while it preheated worked out. So now you've got a kind of creamy texture. Okay, so it should look about like this, right? I used a golden brown, light brown sugar. If you use a darker brown sugar, it's going to be a little bit darker than that. But that's about the right consistency. Again, if you're trying to be a little bit more health conscious, or if you've just got that lying around the house, coconut palm sugar, date sugar, perfectly okay to substitute here. The only issue is going to be, again, that the darker your sugar, the darker your batter is going to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the only thing that it is that you just use a different sugar. That is all. So we have our sugar, we have our butter. I have an egg that has already been cracked by the magic of television. And I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to go ahead and put that directly into the batter, along with a teaspoon of vanilla. So I have just a regular vanilla extract. You can use whatever you've got on hand. Some people have, like, you know, pure vanilla extract. They've got vanilla bean paste. They've got, like, you know, imitation vanilla. Whatever you've got, it's fine. Okay? So dump that straight in. That's a teaspoon of vanilla. And I've got this egg. And again, we are going to whip a lot of air into this batter right now before we incorporate any of the flour. And I think I've talked about it a little bit before. You don't want to overmix batters. That's what tends to be the difference between what I would like to call a good bake or a bad bake. If we were talking about like the Great British Bake Off, when they talk about good bakes and bad bakes, you want to go ahead and slowly but surely, as they say, right? You don't want to go ahead and incorporate and overmix when the flour is in, but you can totally overmix when the liquids are in. This is the great thing about it. You can overmix your dry, you can overmix your liquid. You just don't want to overmix when you put both in. So I'm gonna stick my egg in straight, and I'm gonna show you I'm just gonna stick that straight into my stand mixer, and we are gonna whip this thing until it looks curdled. That sounds really horrendous, but it's true. Scrape the bowl as you go along. Like right now, I'm gonna take my handy dandy spatula, and I'm gonna push. My butter keeps on coming up. It's gonna start looking like raw egg, obviously, incorporated in butter, and it's gonna look curdly looking, and that's great. That's what you want. Actually, right now, I'm on about medium speed. Medium, high speed. Sherry's using a hand mixer. I'm using a stand mixer. You can also be mixing this by hand. Hopefully your room temp butter has kind of gotten beaten down the more that you've mixed it. You want it to go until it is very creamy looking. So it started out like in a curdly texture when you added in the egg, and it kind of looked disgusting. which is a great texture. And then it becomes, the more you mix it, the more aerated it gets. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a little bit more of a close-up here of what's happening in my bowl. See how it is now a lot more creamy looking than it was before, and see how it is now incorporated completely. But if you look really closely, it does look like you curdled milk, like milk gone bad, like the top of the milk that has gone bad. And that's actually the texture you're looking for. And once that is all incorporated in and it looks creamy-ish, a little bit creamy-ish than curdle-ish, you basically hit your mark. And hey, Catherine. Okay, so I went ahead and I'm going to go ahead and push down my batter a little bit because it rose up. Now it's going to feel really wet, and your butter has basically been incorporated in so much that it's no longer like that buttery form. It's going to be like a little bit liquidy. It's going to be like a little bit droopy. I'm going to show you right here. That's basically the texture and the batter. Okay, this is where we're going to start adding in all our flours and things like that. So you should have, some people like separating out their bowls when they do dry mixes. The great thing about cookies versus cakes is that you can dump everything in the same bowl because you've stopped mixing. You've stopped doing all these things. You don't have to stare at it and figure out if you're mixing in your liquids and not. So you don't have to necessarily mix all the dry ingredients in a separate bowl. If you would like to, more power to you. Sherry, did you put all your ingredients in a separate bowl, or have you decided to just add as we go along?
I'm going to add as I go along.
All right. So you are going to be taking a cup of flour. That's any kind of flour you've got. It can be all-purpose. It can be whole wheat. It can be any, bread flour, cake flour, whichever you've got going on, to go ahead and make a cup of flour. I like using a mix of whole wheat and all-purpose. It kind of gives you a little bit of the health factor in the sugar factor that we're about to dump a whole bunch of sugar in this. And you can't really taste the difference between adding a little bit of whole wheat. So it's kind of like when parents used to mush their vegetables into sauces and things like that so that children will eat their vegetables. And that's how I think of whole wheat flour sometimes. So it's a cup of flour, any mix that you would like. All-purpose is the basic. And then it is going to be 3/4 cups of rolled oats. I went ahead and ground half a cup of that. And all I did was I stuck it in a spice grinder. You can stick it in a blender. You can use a mortar and pestle and just go ahead and grind your oats. And that's essentially making it like an oat flour. And I think that incorporation is going to help the cookie in the way that the texture is. This is the one little change that I have made to the Neiman Marcus cookie recipe, because the Neiman Marcus cookie recipe and the DoubleTree recipe, you can just dump the whole oats in. And that's perfectly okay, because as it bakes, the oats are going to get a little bit smaller. They're going to go ahead and, just like when you make oatmeal, they're going to get softer. It's not like you're going to bite into something that's super chunky. So I went ahead though and I ground half a cup of my oats, but in any case, 3/4 cups of oats with your flour. So I'm going to dump that straight into the bowl. And I'll show you, dumping all that straight into the bowl. You are now going to take a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, a pinch of cinnamon, and usually a pinch is if you go ahead and go into your cinnamon, if you take your 2 fingers and you grab a little bit, that is considered a pinch, hence the reason why you pinch your fingers, right? A pinch of cinnamon, or if you want to be super exact about it, it's about a 1/16 of a teaspoon. So cinnamon, and you're also going to go ahead and put a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, do not, at this point, incorporate your baking soda. Don't do it, because we are going to mix the baking soda and the lemon juice together and cause a little bit of a scientific reaction in order for all of this to come together. So salt, pinch of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and that's going to go all in to the mix that we're putting in right now, right? Don't mix anything yet. We're just dumping things in. I just realized I left over some flour here. Okay. Oops. And I'm going to incorporate my regular oats. That's just about a 1/4 cup of oats. Because again, a 3/4 cup of oats, whether that be flour or oat mixture. So I have got in here everything in my dry goods except for my baking soda and the lemon juice. Now, and this is why we're doing this. In the DoubleTree recipe, they're using lemon juice. And everyone is probably thinking to themselves, is this lemon juice going to cause my cookies to kind of taste like lemon? And the answer, surprisingly, is no. The lemon juice, everybody, and I don't know if Mary is on, and hopefully she is, because then she can go ahead and fact check my science. The lemon juice is going to cause a reaction because the acidity in the lemon juice is going to mix with your baking soda, and that is going to cause a chewiness to happen in your cookie. It's not going to make your cookie taste like lemon. We're just using a little bit, though. So it's, oh, there's Mary. I was just talking about Mary, and she joined. So Mary, our science expert.
Mary.
She heard me talking about her. Her ears were burning. She was like, someone is calling me, like a superhero, like a bat signal. And here comes Mary. So again, you're gonna go ahead and take a half teaspoon of baking soda. I've just separated that out in a little container right here so I can go ahead and show you the acidic reaction. We are going to mix the baking soda and the lemon juice together and then dump it into the mix, okay? So if you do not have lemon juice, which is fair because we're in like pandemic time, right? Like who has time if you didn't go to the store and you don't have lemons? You can use a teaspoon of hot water, just plain hot water, and do the same thing that I'm about to do with the lemon juice, and it's going to cause the same reaction. It's going to give you
how much
teaspoon?
Okay.
A quarter teaspoon of lemon juice, a quarter teaspoon of lemon juice, and a half teaspoon of baking soda. Or if you don't have lemon juice, it's going to be a teaspoon of hot water, okay? And we're going to mix that together. And this is going to, again, give it a little bit of a chemical reaction. It's going to cause it to be chewy. So I'm going to show you right now what craziness is going to ensue as I make a mess. Per usual, I have no apron on. Sherry is a pro and has an apron. So we're going to go and take a quarter teaspoon of lemon juice that I have squeezed. And we're going to see, we're also going to see if my baking soda is any good. So here's my baking soda. Here's my lemon juice, and I'm pouring that in. And I don't know if you see it. See how it's bubbly? Mm-hmm. There we go. That's the acidic reaction we're looking for. And we're just going to dump that straight in. You might have to use a spoon to dump your lemon juice and your baking soda in. But that also just shows you if your baking soda is still good, right? Too, if it has that reaction. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we're just going to do a quick mix. Just until it looks like it's incorporated, no more, no less. Because we also still have to add the chocolate chips in. So I'm going to just give it a twirl. You can watch it here. My flour is jumping up to the side of my bowl, so I'm actually going to stop it. It's not even thoroughly mixed in. That's fine. That's totally okay. We just wanted to go ahead and start the mix. I'm going to push down my flour with my spatula, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in some chocolate chips. So you can go ahead and add in here about a cup of chocolate chips. It can be any kind you want. I like using a bittersweet chocolate chip. That's my favorite. You can use semi-sweet. You can use milk chocolate. You can use dark chocolate. Lots of people like using regular chips. I'm also going to try out these really interesting pistoles. Pistoles? Is that a French? Pistoles? They're basically round pieces of chocolate.
Oh,
and
it's like,
the reason
yeah,
why
yeah.
that is because I like when chocolate melts and has puddles in your cookie. Chocolate chips in general, when you put them in, are going to go ahead and hold their form and will stay as a chocolate chip. But when you have chunky chocolate, if you've chopped up a chocolate bar and you stuck it in there, or if you're using something like this, they're going to go ahead and melt a little bit slightly, and when you bite into your cookie, you'll have puddles of chocolate, and that's what I like. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and be fancy and extra. And you just need about a cup. So I stopped my mixer because I didn't want to overmix the batter while I add my chocolate chips. You can also add in about a half a cup if you would like, about a half a cup of nuts. You don't have to. You can just keep this chocolate chippy. If you want to add more chocolate chips, more power to you. Go for it. We are also going to go ahead and grate some chocolate. And I was terrible. And I was just telling Sherry that I completely forgot to take my chocolate out to grate earlier. Woo! And so I'm going to have to do this as we talk. But it's going to be about 2 ounces or about a quarter cup. And this is stealing from the Neiman Marcus recipe, right? Because in the Neiman Marcus recipe, they grate about that amount of chocolate into the batter. And what that's going to do, and Sherry mentioned it, I think, to me when we were talking about this recipe, is it causes these nice little chocolate speckles to show up in your cookie. And who doesn't like a nice little chocolate speckle? It's like a little speckle. So I'm going to use, and Mary and Sherry will appreciate this. I have this weird milk chocolate stroopwafel chocolate that we got in the Netherlands.
Yeah. That's nice.
When we traveled, it feels like such a long time ago when we traveled. And that is what I'm going to grate into this. It has a little bit of a cinnamony taste. I don't know how this is going to affect my chocolate, but I have a standard grater here, and I'm just going to go ahead and grate the chocolate in directly into my bowl. And it's about 2 ounces. So I would say about a quarter cup. It just so happens that this chocolate is in ounces because it's European and there's a metric system going on. I don't know. But I would say, again, about a quarter cup. And I'm going to try to do this without it being all melted on me. It's kind of soothing, though, grating chocolate.
Yeah. So I'm using the milk chocolate from the Netherlands, too.
Are you using Netherlands chocolate, too, Sherry?
The grocery store one. I don't remember.
Yeah, so again, this has a little bit of stroopwafel in it, and I don't know how that's going to change the texture of my cookie. But stroopwafel basically is this like wafer cookie that they make in the Netherlands, and it's delicious on its own, and it's going to be grated into my cookie here. So again, about 2 ounces of chocolate that you're grating in. I'm going to need another bit of chocolate to make 2 ounces. And again, if you're weighing everything out and you're not doing it directly in the bowl like I am, it's about a quarter cup. But guys, I'm going to tell you, if you put more chocolate in than you are supposed to, is that a bad thing? Debate amongst yourselves. I don't know if it is. I feel like it would be delicious.
I think it's fine.
I think it's okay too. So what it's going to do is it's going to cause a little bit of a chocolate speckle, as they say. And this is, again, the trademark of the Neiman Marcus cookie that the woman paid supposedly $250 for Neiman Marcus. Their secret was their grated chocolate, so that's what we're going to do here. So we've done the secret of the DoubleTree cookie, which is the lemon juice and cinnamon, and now this is the secret of the Neiman Marcus cookie. This is just grated chocolate. And again, my mix is not completely mixed, right? I stopped my stand mixer. So there's still lots of pockets of flour and lots of pockets of batter in there, and that is what you are going for. Is we're going to mix all of this in together. All right, I have my chocolate. How are you doing, Sherry?
I'm doing good.
Okay, so this is the point where if you've decided you want a little bit more control, you don't have to use your stand mixer to mix in the chocolate. You can use a spatula. That way you can go ahead and make sure that it's not completely over mixed. I'm going to do a mix of both. I'm going to go ahead and let my stand mixer turn maybe like for about 20 seconds, and then I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to continue mixing it by hand. And the reason why I'm doing that is because just like anything else, baking, do not overmix. And when I say overmix is, once you stop seeing flour, stop. Just stop mixing, because that means your batter is pretty good to go. And if we find pockets of flour later on when we're making the balls for the cookies, don't worry, we'll go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you my bowl. I'm just going to go ahead and go for like 1 or 2 turns, and I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to show you what it looks like with chocolate all over my fingers. Per usual, I'm making a mess, not wearing an apron like the rookie I am. Seasoned pros in the kitchen wearing your aprons. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like. That's my cookie dough. I'm going to stop. There's some flour at the bottom that I can see that I'm just going to hand toss over. And then that's it. I'm not going to worry about it anymore, because as we go ahead and create the dough balls for the cookie, then we're going to go ahead and not worry about half of the ones, half for chocolate, half of that ones. Oh, Alex, I was just reading her comment that she made oatmeal cookies half with chocolate and half without the ones, and the ones without that, one. You know what you can do, and if you don't like chocolate, and I know Mary, who is out there fielding comments, she doesn't like chocolate. You don't have to use regular chocolate here. You can use white chocolate chips. You don't have to use chocolate at all, like Alex just said. I would just up your oatmeal. Add some nuts if you want some texture, and you don't even have to make it a chocolate-ish cookie, right? But you're just going to have the hallmarks of a typical chocolate chip cookie without the chocolate chips, which is kind of a good marriage, I think. of like oatmeal cookie because it'll be less chunky than your normal oatmeal cookie, but kind of like a brown sugary oatmeal cookie. All right, so I'm just cleaning up my spatula because I like getting as much dough as possible. And I'm gonna go ahead and we are gonna go ahead and roll out this cookie dough. Now, you do not have to refrigerate this cookie dough. You can, you don't even have to bake it right now if you don't want to. You can go ahead and refrigerate it and bake it later on. Leave it in your fridge for about 24 hours and you're good to go. I'm just gonna wipe my hands real quick because I have cookie dough and chocolate all over my hands. I'm gonna go ahead and just take.
I think if you use the Quaker Oats, I don't think it's going to change the recipe because that's what I use. But
Yeah,
I just like
Quaker Oats too. Quaker Oats, as long as it's not instant Quaker Oats.
Yeah, you can't use the instant or you can't use like the steel cuts, but it's totally fine.
Yeah, if you're using regular Quaker Oats, it's rolled oats, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my parchment paper and I'm gonna go ahead and I have a standard cookie sheet here. This is what we're using. If you have the kind with the ledges on it and it's like a regular baking pan, that's fine. Anything that has a flat surface, essentially. And I'm just gonna go ahead and take my parchment paper and I'm just gonna stick it directly onto the sheet. And that's what we're gonna do. And now we're gonna go ahead and create the balls of dough from this cookie dough right here. And again, if you don't wanna make the cookies right now, you don't have to. You can refrigerate them up to 24 hours and either bake them tomorrow. In an hour from now, you can bake them. And we can have a whole discussion about freezing them in a second. But you don't necessarily have to do it all right now. I would recommend, if you have a cookie scoop like Sherry, use your cookie scoop. If you don't, and I'll show you a different method, hers is pretty good. I'm gonna use a regular tablespoon. This is a measuring tablespoon. And I'm gonna dunk it in here. You want your balls to be about, depending on how big your cookies are, about 2-ish tablespoons, I would say, is a pretty good size. About like this size, about an inch and a half in diameter. And I'm not being super like, I'm gonna roll this in my hand and make it super circular. I'm just dumping it onto the sheet. And if you have a cookie scoop, this makes your life a lot easier. I'm just showing you the messier way. And I'll see if I can give you a view of my cookie sheet as I do this all. So I'm just doing voila. So I'll give you a little height so that we can see. And again, you can just plop it in there. I would give it about a 2 to 3 inch space. So if you want to make it smaller, that's a tablespoon. Like that size is good too. I do like about a tablespoon and a half. And you just smush it to make it like a circle. I usually do about 3 across on a sheet like this. And make it about either 9 or 12 across. So I'm doing like heaping tablespoonfuls, about a tablespoon or 2 though, like I said. And this is going to go on the sheet. Okay. And here goes this is about a tablespoon and a half. And depending on how big you want your cookies, like sometimes you don't want it even that big. You want it smaller than that. That's fine. I'm actually going to space these out a little bit better. Precarious. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and bake these for about 15 minutes at 325 degrees. I'll do one more. I can get this to be steady. All right. I'm going to do one more. This one might be a little bit smaller than the rest. I'm making this one not as big. And I'm just going to dump that on, spacing them about 2 inches apart, okay? So here's my cookie dough. I'm not going to smush it down. You can. Some people like smushing their cookie down a little bit so that it'll flatten a little bit. You can. You don't have to. You can leave them a little bit raised. I'm going to do like a mix of both. Mine is kind of like puffy. It just depends on how you like it. And I'm going to go ahead and take these cookies and I'm going to stick them in my oven right now. 325 degrees. And we're going to go for about 15 minutes. And you add a great view of my messy work area, per usual, because there's flour all over me, as usual. So while that bakes, I'm going to set my timer, because I always forget to set my timer. I'm setting my timer right now. It's going to go about 15 minutes. I like turning my cookies halfway through the bake. If you have a convex oven, make sure that you double check. You're probably going to need less time to bake these cookies if you're using convex conventional bake. If you're baking just regular 350 degrees, halfway through the bake, spin your baking sheet around so that the cookies in the front kind of get the heat from the back, because everyone's ovens, the temperatures are different, right? So I'm going to check these cookies in like 7 minutes, and then I'm going to flip them around, because sometimes I trust my conventional bakes and sometimes I don't. But thanks to Sherry, who is here with us today, I bought a oven thermometer for my oven to double check the temperature in my oven. So like when I bake, I can figure out if it's my oven or if it's my timing that's off. And I've noticed, and I don't know if that works for you, Sherry, but my oven is pretty spot on. It's off usually about a degree or two, but it's usually about the right temperature that it's.
So my oven is like a few degrees actually lower. So yeah.
So like I said to you, so I still have a couple of cookie dough balls here that I'm going to go ahead and form while we're chatting. But you can go ahead and make them all at once, or, and this is what I like to do, especially when you just want one cookie or two cookies and you don't want to bake like 36 cookies or 24 cookies, you can form out your cookie dough like I'm doing right now and create cookie dough balls, stick them in an airtight container, put them in your refrigerator up to a week even, and you can bake every single day. You can have a fresh baked cookie. I mean, that's how easy that is. Or if you want to be even crazier, you can make into dough balls and then put, again, in an airtight container, like, you know, just in your regular Ziploc bag, or if you've got like fancy plastic containers, do the same thing. Put them in your freezer, and the cookie dough balls are good for like 3 months in your freezer. And you can bake them straight from the freezer. Take out the cookie dough, stick it on a cookie sheet after you preheated it, and then put it into your oven, and you've got a fresh baked cookie. And the great thing about that is that you can have, like I said, a fresh baked cookie if you want every single day, based on just like this one day of baking that we're doing right now. And I always like, and here's a little Julianne randomness for you. I always like have cookie dough in my freezer because A, you never know when you're gonna want a cookie, but also B, have you ever had like people randomly come over when you haven't expected them to come over, and you're like, what am I gonna feed these people? What am I gonna give them? Like, I have nothing. I don't know what to do. And Sherry's like, yeah, no, that's never happened. I plan for these things. Well, like, let's say somebody comes over. Let's say Sherry came over one day, and I'm like, Sherry, you're over. Let's have a snack. You can totally just take the cookies in your freezer, put it on a baking sheet, bake it, come out, and you're like Martha Stewart. It's like, oh my God, you baked cookies from scratch for me while I was sitting here? The answer is yes, I did. So you can go ahead and do that. And what's even better than that is when you're baking, I love the smell of fresh baked cookies baking because it makes your whole house smell like cookies. And that's like natural air freshener for us, you know, for those who like the smell of fresh baked cookies. So I do have cookie dough in my freezer, Alex, for sure. And you know what? Sherry was there. We went ahead, and I liked this blog called Smitten Kitchen, Deb Perlman, and David Leibowitz, who was a pastry chef at Chez Panisse in Berkeley. That's Alice Waters' restaurant for those who are like chef people, who moved to France, and they were talking about things that they have in the freezer. And the number one thing that they have in their freezer, cookie dough. You're welcome, guys. So people that like do this kind of stuff, and they're really great things to like give to people too. You can just give cookie dough to people and just be like, here you go. You just took the time to go ahead and do that. And like I said again, this causes you, if you don't feel like eating 100 zillion cookies, cookie dough, freezer. Or if you are even more inclined, you could take your cookie dough, you could bake it all, today, that we're making today, and then take the cookies you've baked, put that in a Ziploc bag, and stick that in your freezer. And I kid you not, you take that out, let it sit at room temp, take it out, it's like you baked it that day. If you let it sit at room temperature, just like you baked it. So again, that will be good for about, I would say probably about like a month or two if you do it that way, if you go ahead and bake it straight out. Again, it's probably easier to just go ahead and save room in your freezer and have them like cookie dough balls. But if they're not, and you just want to go ahead and bake them all now and have them ready to eat, you can just bake them and then stick them in your freezer. And don't believe those people that tell you that you can't put cookies in your fridge. You totally can put your cookies in your fridge. You totally can put cookies in your fridge. And I say that with a little caveat. What's great about doing that is it will taste, when you get it to room temperature, it'll taste like the day that you bought it or you baked it. But you have to let it come to room temperature. You can't just eat it straight from the fridge. That is the sad part of it. So I just made the last of my cookie dough. Sherry, what are you planning? Are you planning on baking all the cookies today?
Yeah, I'm making all the cookies, and then I'm gonna do a cookie drop off.
Oh, nice.
Because I think it's important to share the cookies.
So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just show you guys, like I was talking about before. So I just pulled this out of my fridge because as I told you, I have random cookie dough hanging out in my fridge and my freezer. So these are just cookies, like I said, that I pre-made balls. I stuck them in. This is like a container that I got from, because I ordered takeout way too much. A takeout plastic container that I just go ahead and like stick, and I just stick this in my freezer. You would label it, like put like a little label on it, like take a piece of tape, write down what date, you put it in the freezer. If you need to remember what this is, I can tell by looking at it what it is, and it's me. It's just me in my house, so I can just put it in there. I know, but for those who live with other people and kids and things like that, and you don't want them getting into things, I would go ahead and like label this, like, hey, this is chocolate chip cookie dough. If you need to leave instructions for people, bake at 350, 325, whatever you like. It's looking that day, 10 to 12 minutes, and you can literally just have cookie dough in your freezer or your fridge. So I'm about to turn my cookies over because we're halfway through this thing. Sherry and I are being rock stars today. We are going quick. I think Sherry and I are gutting for the 1 hour mark today that Mary and I discovered we could do last night. We're trying to keep this under an hour so Instagram doesn't cut us off, so we'll find out. If you label chocolate chip cookie dough, kids will eat it. Yeah, they will. And do not eat this cookie dough. There's cookie dough you can eat. You can have like little bits of it, like when you were little, when you were eating your spoon, like if your mom was making cookies or your dad was making cookies. There's egg in this. This is not the cookie dough that you sit and you just eat like in chunks and delicious by itself. If you eat a lot of it, you might get salmonella. Yeah. However,
you have to be careful about the cookie dough situation. My ex roommate in college, she actually had food poisoning, and then she dropped out of college because she was suffering like all her like intestines and such because of the salmonella. So you have to be careful about that. Do not eat raw cookie dough.
I would say if you're gonna try to make cookie dough like that you're planning on putting like, I don't know, you're being gourmet and you're making ice cream, or you want to give you like raw cookie dough, do not add the egg. Do not add the egg. That is it. Everything else that you put in there is perfectly okay. You can't keep it for a long period of time, but you could eat it raw if you don't put the egg in it, because then now you don't have the idea of salmonella, right? Because all there is in it, it's like, if it's raw flour and butter and like oats and things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily just like eat the cookie dough that we just made together. Don't do that, because it's definitely, that's going to be salmonella. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over my cookies right now. Let's take a look. Ooh, these are master spreaders.
They're like spreading. Like I have like a mega cookie. It's really cool. It's like
so because we didn't, here's another thing, and I'm going to set my timer for another 7-ish minutes. Here's another thing about not refrigerating your cookie dough. So your butter, and my apartment's actually kind of warm because New York is in like the mid-70s today. My apartment's warm, and so the butter has slightly melted a little bit already, and I could tell when I was forming it that it was kind of stickier, right, than usual. And because it was a little bit stickier than usual, I thought to myself, oh boy, this is going to be a spreader. So when you have cookies that have been refrigerated and you use refrigerated cookie dough, the butter kind of reforms itself and solidifies, right? So your cookie dough will be stiffer. And the stiffer of the cookie dough, the more it will not spread as hard as what's happening right now to both Sherry and I. But that's fine because it's going to be that thing where it's a little bit thin and it's going to be a little bit crispy. And I made mine mega large, and I probably shouldn't have done that. I would say you probably should have stuck with like a tablespoon. But I was being
I'm fine with mega cookies.
I was being really ambitious, and I was like, I can eyeball this. I'm just going to dig this in and just take whatever it is and put it on my cookie sheet. Maybe I should have thought about this a little bit more because I should have spread out my cookies a little bit more, thinking to myself that this is not like a refrigerated cookie dough. If your cookie dough is refrigerated, the spread will be limited because of the fact that your cookies have the butter that's a little bit more solid. And you're going to find when you refrigerate your cookie dough, I always like refrigerating my cookie dough in general because of the fact that it concentrates the flavor, but also I don't like when my cookies spread when they're super thin. So we sort of talked about this when I had Drea on, and we were showing you the differences between the refrigerated cookie dough and the regular cookie dough. The cookie dough we didn't refrigerate spreads a whole bunch faster. But what's good about this recipe is it doesn't necessarily require you to refrigerate. Actually, most cookie recipes don't. But I, out of habit, and because I loved watching Nigella Lawson. When she was on Food Network TV, and she would always refrigerate her cookie dough, and I'm like, why are you doing this, Nigella? You want your cookie right now, Nigella, don't do it. And then, by the magic of TV, she would come back, she's like, it's been 24 hours, I'm gonna bake my cookies, and then she would put her cookies in. Ever since she did that, I started doing it, and it's like game changer. So I personally like refrigerating my cookie dough.
So wait, do you refrigerate for like 24 hours?
You don't even have to do 24 hours, Sherry. It literally can be as little as an hour or two just to get it solid. But I personally will if I'm making cookies for somebody or if I'm making cookies for something, I will take my cookie dough, I will make it, and I will stick it in my fridge overnight. And then the next day I will bake it. And it's super easy. And you can bake straight from the fridge or straight from the freezer, depending on how you're doing it. So, Mary, what are you talking about sous vide? Oh boy, I've lost the comments because I haven't been paying attention because I'm going off in my high soapbox and talking about refrigeration of cookie doughs. But these are all the kinds of things guys, I'm being extra. Let's be real. I'm being extra about this. If you want to eat your cookies right now, you don't want to wait, bake the cookies. There's nothing wrong with that. It's gonna, like I said, it's just going to, the texture is just gonna be a little bit different. Oh, pasteurizing eggs. Oh yeah, if you eat raw cookie, yeah, you can pasteurize eggs. As we were talking about, I think it looks like Melissa and Mary were talking about raw cookie dough and eating. So we're gonna find out though, because like I said, I made my cookies rather large, so they're gonna be super spreaders. And we're gonna talk about what you can do if your cookies all stuck together, like I have a feeling mine is going to do. I also like taking a little bit of Maldon sea salt and sprinkling the top of my cookies when they come out of the oven with Maldon sea salt. There is something very delicious to me about salty and sweet. And the chocolate, especially when it's really melted on the top, when you dump some salt on top, like flaky sea salt, oh my gosh, it adds a whole other dimension of flavor. So yeah. I like sprinkling Maldon sea salt on my chocolate chip cookies. Some people don't like salt in their cookies. You don't have to do that, but I'm about to. And usually do that when the cookies are out of the oven. And I use standard Maldon flaky sea salt, which I will find. Maldon. That's the shout out to Maldon. Cool. So I've got another, Sherry, how you doing? About another 5 minutes or so?
I think I'm just going to do it every 2 minutes and sort of see what's going to happen. Because it's my cookies are spreading. And then I think it's just trying to bake. So I think probably 2 or 3 more minutes. We'll see.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of things too, temperature gauges. So the DoubleTree recipe, the original DoubleTree recipe, is a 300-degree bake for 25 minutes. The Neiman Marcus recipe is a 350-degree bake. That's a normal chocolate chip cookie bake for about 10 minutes. That I think gives it that really golden brown look in the beginning, we are doing at 325. We're causing a slow spread like the DoubleTree, but enough heat that hopefully it gets like that golden. We're experimenting a little bit, golden brown that you get at 350. But if you've, you know, by default, you've made a lot of cookies and you're just like, I like my cookies at 350 for 10 minutes, you know, knock yourself out. That's totally okay too. I always forget because most of the time when I'm making cookies, it's usually 350. And by habit, I always just bake everything at 350 and never pay attention to any of the recipes. It's a very bad habit. One should always read the recipes all the way through. If Ruby were here, on this with me right now, she would just be like, everything you're saying right now, Julian, is terrible. You need to read the recipe all the way through and follow directions. And I'm so not a direction person. Sometimes I just like, you know, doing what I need to do. Yeah. See, Mary refrigerates her cookies also before baking. And again, you can do that. I mean, Sherry and I'm going to show you what it looks like when you bake straight out. And again, I'm gonna go ahead and I refrigerated some cookie dough earlier. I made like kind of like a batch before just because I like refrigerating my cookie dough, and I stuck that in the fridge and I showed it to you, and you can do that as well. So, oh, Ruby's in Vermont. Thanks, Alex. She totally would. She would just be like, Julianne, if it says 350, you need to bake it 350. If it says 325, you bake it 325. So. But I've forgotten, once I forgot, and it was supposed to bake at 300 and I baked at 350, but I baked for less time. So it's not okay. But for the most part, yeah, you should follow directions. I will say that. Okay, I take it back. You should follow directions. But if you mess up, it's okay because you can kind of fix it. I know I'm being very contradictory.
So I have like a few more minutes.
I'm going to take a look at mine actually, real quick. I think mine are going to be done in like 2 minutes, but they super spread out. But again, I made mega-sized cookies, probably about half a tablespoon to a tablespoon more than I should have put in the cookie dough as balls.
That's okay.
Yeah. So because I think I made about 12. My mix made about 12 mega cookies.
Yeah.
If you were being a little bit more responsible and made them probably a little smaller, you probably would come up with about maybe 18 to 20 based on this. And if you want more cookies, of course, you can always double the recipe.
Yeah.
That is totally all right. Is anybody actually baking along with us right now in real time and has actually finished their cookies? Because if you are, I need to know how they turned out. Like, you need to get on and let us know. And like, you know, type it out, and I'm gonna force you to comment back to us right now. Otherwise, if you're baking it like tomorrow because you've refrigerated your cookie dough, or you're gonna make it later on because there's things going on in your life right now, that's totally okay too. But please tag Sherry and I so we can see your cookies and how they turned out. I would love to see how they turned out. Oh, Christine is, and she's almost finished. Perfect. Oh, Catherine, in your oven.
Wow.
Oh, nice, nice. Melissa has ingredients on her counter, and Alex is sitting aside. She'll bake later. Fair.
Oh, that's great.
All these things are fair. All that I ask is that, whatchamacallit, if you do bake them, please definitely show Sherry and I. We'd love to see what happened as we were baking with you, and Julian was randomly throwing a whole bunch of tips at you, and Sherry was shaking her head at me. And she was like, She was like, I wouldn't. So Mary will be happy that I'm sort of cleaning up my mess because my counter, per usual, is a mess. But like I said, I'm taking mine out in about 2 minutes. So I'll show you guys what it's gonna look like in about 2 minutes. And I will go ahead and I will sprinkle some sea salt on top. I saw some leftover chocolate. That chocolate that pretty good chocolate. That's the Droop Waffle from the Netherlands. I love European chocolate, guys. I mean, their dairy content of their chocolate is delicious. Not to bash American chocolate, but I feel like European chocolate, is it their dairy-fed cows? I don't know. There's just something more, I don't want to say chocolatey about chocolate from Europe, but it has more like a milky taste to it than the chocolate does here.
I think it's because of like the grass thingy. The grass.
I think it is too. And so last week when we made scones, I used Kerrygold Irish butter, and I had leftovers, and that's what I put in these cookies, and they're gonna be freaking delicious because Kerrygold is the secret lots of bakes. Guys, that's another tip for you. Kerrygold. If you're having a random bake-off with friends and you need it up, use Kerrygold. That's going to be my baking tip on top. They'll be like, what secret ingredient have you used? You use Irish butter. That's what you use. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab my cookies.
I'll show you my cookies.
So I'm going to show you guys, like I said, I made like cookies. Cookies. They're done. They're beautiful. I made mega large chocolate cookies, as you can see. I'm going to take some Malden sea salt right now. And I'm just going to sprinkle the tops. I'm going to make it rain sea salt.
Oh, that's nice.
On the top of my cookies. Now, and I'll show you like a little trick because I went ahead and I baked them and they spread. And this is the unrefrigerated dough, right? So the spread happened pretty thorough, right? And I made mega cookies. I made them larger than I probably should have. See how like these ones are kind of stuck together? While it's still hot, you literally can take a knife. You can take a knife, you can even take a spoon, any like kind of blunt edge, and you can pry them away from each other, like so. So that way when they're still kind of cooling down, they won't be stuck together. Mine was just stuck together just a little on the sides. So you are gonna let this cool on this baking pan, guys. Hold yourself back. If you like eating warm cookies, then don't hold yourself back. But let these cool on a baking pan for about, I would say about 10 minutes or so to get them about to room temp. And then once they're a little bit cooler, you can move them onto a wire rack to finish cooling. And the reason why is they're actually still baking. Your cookies are still baking while they're on the sheet because your baking sheet's still hot. And you do want it to bake just a little bit longer on the sheet. And if you take it off right now, they're so warm, they will crumble in your hands. And you'll no longer have cookie, you will just have cookie crumbles, which equally delicious. I won't lie to you, equally delicious. So I'm gonna take these, I'm gonna stick them here on top of my oven. And Sherry's done, and I'm done. And we have finished this bake, guys. And it's going to be less than an hour. I don't know if this is the record because I feel like Mary and I know. I think Mary and I finished a little bit longer. But we're done. Sherry's done. Juliana's done. I hope that you guys are done at home. I know that Catherine and Christine were taking theirs out, and Alex and Melissa were going to bake later, perhaps. So enjoy your Saturday, guys. I mean, thank you very much for joining us again. This is week 9 of me baking in my Brooklyn kitchen and being joined with all my fantastic friends like Sherry and all of you guys. And I just want to say thank you for sitting here with me in the kitchen, being social as we sit in quarantine. All right. So enjoy your Saturday. Stay safe. Stay home. Put them in the fridge. Put them in wherever. And I will see you next Saturday, where I will have the return of Casey Rodriguez, and we are making a lemon blueberry muffin and a Rice Krispie treat. 2 for 1 next week. Okay.
That's exciting.
It's going to be very exciting, guys. All right. I'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Enjoy your Saturdays. Bye.